Alpha ARCs might have been sent in to train the local rebels, but Omega were being inserted to topple a government. It wasn't the first, and it probably wouldn't be the last.
Heads up, people. Here we go.
Niner activated the receiver. The blue hollow image leapt from the projector, and burly, bearded Jedi General Arligan Zay, Director of Special Forces, was suddenly sitting in the compartment with them.
"Good afternoon, Omega,"
he said. It was the middle of the night as far as they were concerned.
"I've got a little good news for you."
Fee was back on the secure helmet comlink now. Darman's red HUD audio icon indicated that only he could hear him.
"Which means the rest of it is bad?"
"That's good, sir,"
said Niner, deadpan.
"Have we located the ARC Alpha 30?
Zay seemed to ignore the question.
"No, Sergeants. Aiden's sent secure drop zone coordinates, and you're clear to go in."
Fee's comlink popped in Darman's ear again.
"Here comes the bot."
"But,"
Zay went on,
"ARC Trooper Alpha 30 now has to be treated as MIA. He hasn't reported in for 2 months. And that isn't unusual, but the local resistance told Sergeant Aiden that they lost contact about the same time."
Aiden was one of Scarada's null ARCs. He'd been sent in a few standard days ago to assess the situation. And if he couldn't find the missing ARC trooper, then the man was definitely lost. As in dead lost. Darman wondered what could possibly have happened to an ARC. They weren't exactly easy kills. The Nulls treated their Alpha brothers as knuckle-draggers. But they were pure Jango Fett, genetically unaltered except for their rapid aging, and they'd been trained by him personally. Hard, resourceful, dangerous men. Still, even the best could have bad luck. It meant that training and motivating the Gaftakari resistance was down to Aiden now. Darman hoped it didn't end up being his job. All he could think about was how long he'd be stuck there and when he might see Etain again. Smuggled letters and comlink signals weren't enough, so what can they do to us? So what if anyone finds out? Darman didn't really know how hard the Grand Army or the Jedi Council could make life for him or Etain. There was always the chance that he'd never see her again. He wasn't sure he could handle that. He knew she was his only taste of a real life.
"So, are we starting over, General?"
Niner asked. Zay's desk wasn't visible in the hollow image, but he was sitting down, and he glanced over his shoulder as if someone had come into the room.
"Not entirely. The rebel militias are competent, but they still need some help in destabilizing the Gaftakari government, and they need equipment like the Deces we're dropping."
Zay paused.
"Not full spec, of course."
"I see. We trust them implicitly, sir."
"We've had 1 or 2 aid operations backfire, Sergeant. I admit that. No point overarming them so they can turn around and use the kit on us. This does the job."
"Any general intel update on Gaftakar?"
"No. Sorry. You'll have to fill in the gaps yourself."
"Numbers?"
"Aiden says around 100,000 trained rebel troops."
Darman blinked to activate his HUD database and checked the estimated population of Gaftakar. 500 million. Capital city Ayat, population 500,000. He was used to odds like that now.
"Well, at least Alpha 30 was busy while he was there, sir,"
said Niner.
"The rebels are very good at cascading training. Train 10, they train 10 each, and so on."
"Given our limited numbers, sir, have you ever thought about deploying the whole GAR that way? The war would be over a lot faster. It's a strategy, I know."
Zay always had that one note in his voice lately that made him sound ashamed and embarrassed. Nobody had to ask if this is how he wanted to play things. It was another objective from the Chancellor on the list of take this planet and don't give me excuses orders.
"But all you need to do is remove the leadership of the Ayat administration, and the rest follows. So you prepare the battleground for the infantry, enable the rebels. Do what you can, lads, because I can't spare any more men to help you."
"Great. Understood,"
said Niner. Sometimes Darman wanted to ram his sergeant's patient acceptance down his throat.
"Omega out."
Nobody needed to remind Zay how thinly spread all the GAR forces were, especially special operations. They were cross-training regular troops for commando roles now. The GAR had fewer than 5,000 Republic commandos. Inadequate didn't even come close. It was a joke. Darman waited for Niner to sign off with a surprisingly perfunctory salute and close the link. And that wasn't good old gung-ho Niner at all. It was the closest he'd ever come to showing his frustration to the squad. Maybe the Republic would have been better off with droids after all. They don't get hacked off about what's happening to them, and they don't fall in love.
I'll try to look on the bright side, seeing as that's my job,
said Fee.
Last time we inserted into enemy territory without any decent intel and with totally inadequate numbers, we made lots of interesting new friends. Maybe I'll be the one to get lucky this time.
Darman ignored the gibe about Etain.
The Gaftakari rebels aren't your type, Fee. They're lizards. So are Falleen. I mean lizards, like luggage on legs. They've got a human population, too. Optimist.
Niner changed the subject with uncharacteristic gentleness.
Come on, we always insert without enough intel.
He hadn't told Fee to shut up in ages, as if he felt sorry for him now.
It's the way the world works, okay? Buckets on! We'll be over Ayat in 20 minutes.
The core conveyor's cargo hangar was a stark void with a ramped airlock at one end. It was an armed freighter, one of many commandeered from the merchant fleet taken up from trade, and so nicknamed Tufties, and it was built simply to move vehicles and supplies, and sometimes men, and unload them discreetly where required. Darman wondered what its cargo had been in peacetime. Like the small traffic interdiction vessels, it masqueraded as a neutral civilian craft for covert operations. Tufties could be deployed on planets where the arrival of an acclimator would get the wrong sort of attention. Darman picked his way through them, following Atten to the hangar doors where a loadmaster in yellow-trimmed pilot armor minus helmet steered crates on repulsors toward the ramp and lined them up. "Deces," said the loadmaster, not looking up from his datapad. "And a few E-webs and one large arty piece."
How many webs?
Atten asked. 50.
Is that the best we could do?
We've been arming them for a year. Just a top-up. The loadmaster seemed satisfied that he had the correct consignments, and stared at the commandos with a wary eye. He reached for the rail that ran along the bulkhead, and hooked his safety line to it. "If it's any comfort, you look pretty sinister in that black rig, even with the white wings. I don't think you're a bunch of overrated Mando-loving weirdos at all." Fee gave him a bow.
May all your future deployments be with the Galactic Marines on fresher detail. Nervard.
But Atten could never pass things off with a joke.
What's your problem, pal?
"Just wondering," said the loadmaster.
Wondering what?
"Mandos. You ever fought those guys? I have. They keep popping up in SEP forces. They kill us. And you were raised as good little Mando boys. Is that who you feel you are?"
Let's put it this way, said Fee. I don't feel like a Republic citizen, because none of us are. In case you hadn't noticed, we don't exist. No vote, no identification docs, no rights.
Niner shoved Fee in the back.
1 to 5. Shut it, Loadmaster. Wind your neck back in and don't question our loyalty, or I'll have to smack you. Now, let's get to work.
It was the first time that Darman could recall the sense of brotherhood among clones. All clones, regardless of unit faltering. The 2nd Airborne obviously had an issue with Mandalorians, and maybe the nearest they could kick were the Republic commandos. Raised, trained, and educated mostly by Mandalorian sergeants like Scarada, Vu, and Brawler, he thought it was a bad omen for the mission. Yes, Sergeant Cal would be very upset to see this. Core conveyor was low enough now for them to see the landscape beneath from one of the viewports. Darman could see from his HUD icon of Niner's field of view that he wasn't looking at the drop zone, but was engrossed in his datapad. It was just a mass of numbers. Atten, though, was reading a message, and although Darman tried not to be nosy, he couldn't help but notice that it was from Lysima, his Twi'lek girlfriend. And it was educational. They do say it's the quiet ones that want watching. Darman tried to concentrate on Gaftakar. It looked like a nice place, even at night. It wasn't a red, dusty wasteland like Geonosis, or a freezing wilderness like Fest. From this height, the city of Ayot was a mosaic of illuminated parkland and busy, straight roads fringed by regularly spaced houses speckled with gold light. A river wandered through the landscape, visible as a black glittering ribbon. It looked like the kind of place where the people had normal lives and enjoyed themselves. It didn't look like enemy territory at all. Darman cut into Fee's personal circuit to speak, but was instantly deafened by the volume of the Glimmick music. That was how Fee dealt with things. A thick wall of noise and chatter to shut out the next moment. Darman cut out of the circuit again. The Loadmaster lowered his visor and placed his hand over the control panel.
Okay, remember, just let yourselves drop like a normal parasail jump for a few seconds, then activate the jets. Don't power out. Opening in 5, 4.
I'd rather know if the jetpack didn't work when I still had my boots on the deck,
said Fee.
2, and go.
The cargo doors slid back and a fierce blast of air peppered dust against Darman's visor. The charts were over thick forest now. The Loadmaster had one hand on the cargo release and his head turned toward the holochart, projected on the control panel. It showed open land a few kilometers ahead. When conveyor overflew it, the open space turned out to be short, dry grass. It showed up clearly in Darman's night vision filter.
Get away,
said the Loadmaster, releasing the static lines. The crate slipped off the ramp one by one and glided toward the land on extraction parasails that looked like exotic white blooms opening in the night. Thanks for tuning in. This has been a reading of Star Wars Republic Commando, True Colors by Karen Travis. Production by Michael Tanner. Read to you by Guthrie Worthington.